Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe Samriego here, along with Kobe Lamas from the Podium Finish and Matthew Bro. Very excited to have you joining us as we discuss the Repco Supercar Series season opening race and NASCAR Cup Series at Phoenix. Before we dive into the NASCAR action, a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, and our newest member, David. You too can invest in the Grid Network through our Patreon monthly investment. Once we get to 500, we could start sending folks to the track regularly, or you could do a one-time contribution through Buy Me a Coffee. Links in the video description. Either option takes less than 5 minutes. And of course, Kobe, Matthew, the United Rental 500 at Phoenix is the final race of the West Coast Wing. And of course, we know it's going to be the final race of NASCAR's 75th season this year, where they'll crown a champion. That event, of course, will be held later in the year. So a good day here could be a really good indicator of what you're looking at when it comes to the playoffs, and especially you make it to the championship four. We have three drivers that got wins so far this year: Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kyle Busch, and the latest one, William Byron over at Las Vegas. Starting with you, Matthew. Could aim these three with a win already in the bag. Look at this weekend as a testing opportunity, trying different setups for preparations of potentially being in that championship weekend?
I think that's a great question, really. It's kind of hard to answer in the sense where, since this is still kind of like a new car to these teams, to these drivers, and this is only about the 40, it'd be the 40th, like non 40th points race in this car. So I don't know about these teams if they're going to be like, oh, we're guaranteed we're going to make it to the championship four. Let's start a setup. Because if you look at drivers, like, let's start in the list that you gave us: Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Daytona 500 winner. He is not, in the nicest way possible, in the most recent races here at Phoenix, has just not been good, unfortunately. His average finish here is 26.2 in the last six races, only has one top 20. Maybe with him, since he's already guaranteed a playoff spot in the sense, maybe he tests the setup to try to get it done. Maybe, like, we're going to be talking about qualifying setups, maybe he's the guy to do that. Kyle Busch, I think, is the driver you're going to have the most confidence in, that could probably make it to at least the round of 8, maybe the round of the championship 4 at Phoenix. So maybe he'll be a guy you think can probably contest for a regular season championship as well. So you'd argue he might do that as well. And then William Byron, I don't know what's going on with the Hendrick cars. I'm sure we'll be talking about it over the next couple of days with the whole hood flap thing going on. But maybe this is an opportunity for William Byron, who completely dominated last race. I would argue that's probably the biggest domination we've seen with this next gen car, is William Byron at oh my god, I like drew a blank for a second. It's Las Vegas. I was about to say Auto Club, but that was last week. So to answer your question, I think they could, but I'm not sure with how new this car is if we will see these teams do such a thing.
And looking at Kyle Busch and William Byron, I think those are the teams that are probably going to try new setups for the championship four, because with all due respect to Ricky Stenhouse Jr., was great. He won the Daytona 500 and on getting JTG Daugherty racing into the playoffs this year. But being realistic, I don't think, trying to test for the championship four is going to do them any good, because I would be very surprised if they make it that far into the playoffs. So I don't think that's something that they should be really concerned about right now. But I think it's a great chance for Kyle Busch with Byron's teams to go out there, try something. If it works, great. We'll put that in a notebook for when we come back here in November to crown a champion. And if it doesn't, no worries, because it's not going to penalize you at all. And with this winning your in system, you get that win. You can test things throughout the year, and for all the stuff that work, you can apply it to your cars when it comes to the playoffs. And if it doesn't work, it's no big deal, because they don't have to worry about points racing.
Yeah, points racing, not an issue pretty much with this new format, and especially since they got rid of the top 30 in points. Going to be really curious, particularly with Kyle Busch, Richard Childress Motorsports, how much they're going to push the envelope and try something different. The one thing that I feel is just very unique with this compared to Las Vegas, where you got to get in that round of 8, you win there, you're in a really good spot for the championship four. Here, Phoenix, you have to be in the championship four. That means you got to get it done at Vegas or one of those other two tracks. If you don't get it done, you're just coming here racing for at best 5th place. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the teams do. Kyle Busch, I think, is good. Rich Chills Racing, they're one of those teams. They have to feel pretty good. They should be one of the championship four contenders. Last year, we had three different drivers finish in the top five of both races in Phoenix, starting with Ryan Blaney. Had no wins last season, looking for his first win since August 28th, 2021. And you, of course, you have Ross Chastain. Had a great season. 2 wins, was in the championship four. His top 10 streak finish at Las Vegas this last weekend. And then the winner of this event last year, Chase Briscoe. He won the fall event here last year, as I mentioned. Made it to the round of eight, but just came up short of the final four. So he was not contender for that championship November here at Phoenix. Kobe, out of those three drivers, which one do you think is going to have the best result at Phoenix?
Well, you mentioned last night how things start off this week. I think Ryan Blaney is probably in the best position to have the top result because Blaney was there to charge. He was second fastest to Kyle Larson, who led the practice session yesterday on Friday evening. And Team Penske, Joey Logano, he came out here last year and he won the race and the championship. Team Penske is always quick when it comes to Phoenix Raceway. So it would not surprise me if Ryan Blaney has the best finish out of those drivers. And looking at Ross Chastain, things didn't really go well in practice. That's why he was only 26 fastest. So Trackhouse certainly has some work to do. And Chase Briscoe, I think that this will be a great time to really get his 2023 season started. Briscoe was fifth fastest in practice, and 2023 hasn't gone well at all for Chase Briscoe. He got involved in a crash in the Daytona 500, disappointing 35th place finish. In Fontana, he was really slow all afternoon, and he just had a whole bunch of problems out there, but still ended up getting a top 20 finish, all things considered. So I guess that is he was able to salvage, a much better finish than where he possibly could have finished in Las Vegas. Off the pace again, very slow, ended up finishing 28th in that race. So I think that, looking at how he did last year, coming out here, getting that first win of his NASCAR Cup Series career, I think Briscoe can look at that race and the speed he's already shown this weekend, and he can go out there and really start 2023 this weekend in Phoenix.
Yeah, and for me, I think this is also a tough question. When you look at it, you have Ryan Blaney, who has the best average finish here amongst the three drivers. You have Ross Chastain, who I'd argue is the best driver at the moment of these three. And then you have Chase Briscoe, who's the only one who has won here in the recent memory. So that's a tough one because I would argue, I want to put this prediction down. I think all of these drivers can and probably will finish in the top 10 for this race tomorrow. It's hard to really say, though, because Ryan Blaney had the second fastest lap in practice. And it just seems to be a Chevrolet and Ford day. I don't know if the Toyota showed up yet to the track. I mean, I believe Martin Truex Jr. and Bubba Wallace were like 16th and 17th fastest. They'll correct me if I'm wrong about that. But I mean, Martin Truex Jr. is the only Toyota to win here in the past 6 races. So he might be someone. But going back to the question, obviously, if I had to pick just one, I think I can't. I don't know. I'm gonna stick between either Blaney or Chastain. I think Blaney has some fire after Kyle Petty's Casey Kane comments. I think even though drivers are supposed to ignore that, we all know deep down that he knows that was said about him. So I would say him, but it's just hard to argue. I think Chastain's really the best driver since this next gen car has debuted. He's just really been up in the top 5, up in the top 10 almost every single race. I think they might fight for a 1, 2, 3 finish between at least those two. Might pick a winner, I'm going to say, who will be number 1. But I think Briscoe is also, like Kobe was saying, that Stewart-Haas pace has just not been there yet. But I think Fords and this track have gone together quite well. And I think if Briscoe can find pace at all, it's going to start tomorrow today in qualifying, tomorrow during the race. So I didn't really answer your question, Joe, but in the sense – it was hard between Blaney and Chastain, but I'm going to say Chastain. I'll just say that, but I think Blaney will finish 1 spot behind him.
With these 3 drivers, I feel Blaney, he seems to be really good here. He just has to close that deal, get that win, and he'll love to do it here. Briscoe, I think Kobe pointed out very well that his season has been rough. if he could come here, get a top 5 finish, that's a great day for that team. He'll love to get a win, but I think they'll be happy if they get a top 5. And then looking at Ross Chastain, how close he came to Joey Logano, but just could not get that done. Been fast all season. Really was in contention for that top 10 finish until overtime. I think he's got a good potential for being up there. So I'm leaning towards Blaney being up towards the front. Briscoe might be more happy to settle for 5th place, but I wouldn't count out Chastain. That's a big contender for potentially to win too. And of course, qualifying, that's going to be really important, and it's always important here at Phoenix. And while we have seen drivers come from the back to the front to get the win, we all know you start up front, that is the easiest route. Last 5 races here, the winner has come from the top 10 starting positions, and of course, since 2020, the pole sitter for the fall race here has won the race and, of course, gone on to win the championship. So 5 times the winners in total for all the races here have come from outside the top 10. Daytona, the Clash, that race, of course, is an exhibition race. Then you had the Daytona 500, where you saw essentially the blue-green duels set the field. Auto Club, no qualifying due to rain. And then you finally had regular qualifying on the first mile and a half oval at Las Vegas. Matthew, will this be the first indicator of teams, their qualifying setups? And which teams do you think will be up front, especially as we get through the season with all this qualifying?
I think this might be a sense of the first indicator. I think, again, like I was saying earlier with these cars, I don't know if they're ready yet to change as much during the setup, because you want to see what happened. I know this was pre-next gen, but the whole during COVID with Kyle Larson, they didn't change his setup. I believe was at like Daytona or something like that, where he went from being up front to being like right in the back of the pack almost immediately. If I were to, I think, okay, but I will say yes, though. I mean, I got to stop questioning myself a little bit on this end, but I think, yes, this will be the first indicator. Again, though, I'm not sure if we'll see many Toyotas up front. Just for some reason, Phoenix has not really gone their way lately, except for Martin Truex Jr. But in terms of Fords and Chevrolets, I think the teams, like usual with Ford, with Penske, I think they're going to be up front. And then Hendrick Motorsports on the Chevrolet side, I think those guys are going to be up front. Because if you look at the practice, I mean, it was Hendrick, Penske, Stewart Haas, RFK, and then even Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was starting 7th. So maybe I should take back what I was, practice, he was a 7th fast. Maybe I should take back a little what I said. But those are the 2 teams, I believe, Team Penske on that end. All those drivers can win a race here. All those drivers can win a race in general. Then same on the Hendrick Motorsports side. So those are my 2 teams I'm going to pick for the fastest in qualifying right after the show ends.
Yeah, Matthew, and looking at the teams you mentioned, Team Penske, Hendrick Motorsports, I think those are going to be the ones who are obviously going to be up towards the front. And speaking of first indicators, this is also going to be our first time seeing the updated aero package for the short tracks and the road course as well. We talked about it on Grid tonight, smaller spoiler, lower downforce, make the cars a lot harder to drive, because last year, coming to these tracks had a lot of issues with dirty air. And, as you got deeper into a run, it got super hard to pass. It was like a big bubble between you and the car ahead, and it was like almost impossible to pass. Like the only way you could really pass, using the bumper if you could get there, or the driver ahead of you just making a mistake. And we didn't really get to see, the only action you really saw was on the restarts on these tracks. So NASCAR is hoping that with this new aero package, and that's the reason why they had the 50-minute practice session last night, so the drivers could get some practice time with this new aero package. And it's going to be interesting to see if it's going to solve some of the issues that we saw last year. And I know Tyler Reddick, when he was speaking this week, he was talking about last year we saw improved race on the intermediate tracks, and now it seems like Tyler Reddick believes that we're actually headed in the wrong direction, going back to where we were, before the next gen car, when we had the 550 horsepower full throttle package on those tracks. Tyler Reddick seems to believe that that's where we're headed on the intermediates now, since the teams are beginning to figure things out, and that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear, that we could be going back to full throttle on those intermediate tracks after we saw such great racing last year. But for now, gonna hope to see some improvements on the shorter ovals like Phoenix.
Definitely, we're going to be really interesting to see what happens with this new package. A couple of comments from the chat room. Dimas, thank you for joining us, and very excited to be back. Been a while. Adam Lemeries, what are your thoughts on Jenson Button running at Coda in a few weeks? Definitely, I would say quickly, and then I'll throw it to you, Matt and Kobe. Very excited to hear that news, and of course, I think we'll have more on that come grid tonight.
Yeah, and for me to answer that, I remember putting him as an honorable mention in a story I wrote about the top 5 drivers I'd love to see with Project 91. Even though it's not Project 91, I just love to see non-NASCAR drivers in NASCAR showing off their skills. And obviously, Formula One world champion. That's pretty awesome for motorsport fans all around.
Yeah, certainly, Matthew and Joe, you're right. I already had plans to include Jenson Button on grid tonight on Wednesday, since it is such a big story, big deal. Really cool to see all these drivers who are crossing over, trying out the NASCAR Cup Series. And the really exciting thing about Jenson Button, yes, he's driving for Repco Racing, who typically runs at the back during the Cup races, but it's going to be a Stewart-Haas Racing built car. So Jenson Button is going to be in competitive equipment. That's really going to be super exciting for him, and exciting for motorsports. I'm sure for all the fans out there who haven't bought a ticket, this ticket is selling like hotcakes, because who wouldn't want to see Jordan Taylor, the Corvette Racing factory driver, Kimi Räikkönen, Formula One world champion, Jenson Button, another Formula One world champion in racing, also IndyCar driver Connor Daly is going to be in it with the money team as well. So it's going to be quite an all-star race for the NASCAR race in a couple of weeks at Circuit of the Americas. And Dimas says, do we know that Jenson Button's going to be running 3 races in the Cup Series? Yep, Jenson's debuting at Coda. We're also going to see him at the Chicago Street Course and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course too. It'll be really exciting to see what Jenson can do in a NASCAR Cup Series car.
Very exciting. I think this is just going to add more attention to NASCAR at Coda, and it just seems that Coda, from all the road courses so far, has really been starting to stand out, even more so than Watkins Glen lately. I know a lot of attention on Watkins Glen last year because Kimi Räikkönen was there, but it just seems Coda is really starting to stand out. I'll be really excited to see if we get more and more drivers in there. Now, one driver probably is not going to be in Coda and won't be at today's race, Chase Elliott, who's potentially out for 6 weeks. Joshua Berry is in the seat. Full report was made on grid tonight, and of course you can click on our profile, find the video, and we'll have a link in the video description. Last year, Chase Elliott, 11th place in this race, then 28th in the championship race. Of course, he had contact with Ross Chastain. Now, Chase, once he comes back, he doesn't have to worry about the top 30 in points. He just has to focus on getting a win. I think a lot of folks are confident he's going to get that win. I think a lot of folks are confident he will advance out of that round of 16, get into the other rounds of the playoffs. But here's the thing, as you mentioned, Kobe, we have a new aero package at this track. You don't have Chase Elliott getting those notes, relaying information to the team. You have Joshua Berry doing that instead. So, Kobe, will Josh Berry essentially be driving not only for a good result for himself and for the team, but to pick up valuable data, information for the 9 team to have that for Chase Elliott? And can that even work, having one driver get data for another driver, because you got 2 different drivers essentially?
Yeah, Joe. I think Josh Berry can really help out the 9 team in that aspect, collecting data, telling the team what he feels with the car and all of that. And not just Josh Berry. He has three other teammates as well from Hendrick Motorsports to lean on. Yeah, Kyle Larson, Alice Bowman, and William, and we know teams like that always share notes, so he'll have a lot of notes to look from when Chase Elliott returns. But Josh Berry going to be really interested to see how he's going to do this weekend. And we actually mentioned this on Grid tonight, how it's really unfair to compare to say, I guess to give a fair assessment of Josh Berry. It's unfair to say that last week's performance is a representation of what he's capable of in that 9 car, because he only knew like at the very end of the week that he was going to be in the car. So he had no preparation at all for the race. So he was basically, just heading in the weekend blind, not knowing anything about the next gen car and how it drives and all of that. So it was a big struggle in Las Vegas. But I think having this entire week, knowing that he was going to be in the car to prepare and all of that, I think we're going to see a much better performance from Josh Berry in Phoenix. And yeah, I know looking at the charts that Josh Berry was only 23rd fastest in practice yesterday, and looking at the best 10 consecutive lap averages, he was only 21st fastest there. And I think as time goes on this weekend, he gonna have qualifying today, race tomorrow. I think as he continues to get laps under his belt in this next gen car, that it's only going to get better in the next few weeks ahead, because Josh Berry is a really good race car driver, and you hear everyone from Dale Earnhardt Jr. to other drivers as well, saying that Josh Berry is the real deal, and I think that this is a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I mean, coming from like when Dale Jr. says that Josh Berry is going to be a threat at the Cup level once he gets up to there, you can't bash him. I know there's definitely reasons to why he is driving this number 9 car for, I guess, 5 out of the next 6 weeks, including obviously last week. But it's, I guess, with driver data, I mean, I think Josh Berry drives a little similarly. There are too many syllables in that word for me today, but I think he does compared to Chase Elliott. So I think it will be great data. I mean, you still have 3 other drivers on the team as well. But I mean, it's very hard to compare myself to someone else or anyone in the sport. Nobody drives exactly the same. But at the same time, just any data you could possibly get is going to be great for Chase Elliott. And this is a very unfortunate circumstance for Chase Elliott. He is arguably one of the best drivers at Phoenix, besides in the next-gen car when he finished outside the top 10 both times. He has 1 win in all the rest of his races here at Phoenix before the next-gen car since 2020 have all been top 10 finishes. So, I mean, are we expecting Josh Berry to run up in the top 5, top 10 contend for this win? Probably not, but at the same time, I would expect him to be in the top 20 with a Hendrick Motorsports car, especially at this track with all those drivers being fast. So I think the notes kind of from Berry can be applied to Chase Elliott, but at the same time, it's very hard to compare. But at the end of the day, you really never know what can happen. Maybe this is the best possible scenario for the 9 team, putting Josh Berry in the car and being able to transfer that data over from when Chase Elliott gets healthy and comes back.
Going to be really interesting with this new package. See what Josh Berry that 19 could do. They're going to probably be relying heavily on those other teammates as well. But overall, I think you brought up a good point. Seems like Josh Berry could be a good fit where, hey, Chase Elliott, they could even talk about this race after the race weekend. Another comment in the chat from Demas. Final race, of course, for Kevin Harvick at this track. Now, of course, Kevin Harvick, very good at Phoenix overall. A lot of wins here, very successful. And this will be his second to last start here. Of course, he's going to be starting the final race of the season. Maybe he'll be in championship 4, maybe not. We have to wait to see. But last year, he scored 2 top 10 finishes right here at Phoenix. Matthew, do you see Kevin Harvick contending for the win? Top 5, top 10, or potentially not a factor in today's race?
I will be shocked if we don't see Kevin Harvick running up front. Because, I mean, this driver, for me, I don't know about you guys. Like, a lot of people think peanut butter and jelly go together. For me, put peanut butter on your cheeseburger. Try it out. Let me know. It is one of the most underrated food hacks ever. But what I'm getting at, Kevin Harvick in Phoenix is like putting peanut butter on your cheeseburger. Perfect. Amazing. Absolutely delicious. Kevin Harvick has 19 straight top 10 finishes here. He's just an incredible driver at this track. It's truly remarkable how you can describe Kevin Harvick here at Phoenix. So I think he will absolutely be contending at least in the top 10. And then even if he has a bad day, I will probably be somewhere around the top 10. He has I believe a 4.6 average finish here at Phoenix in the last 10 races. 4.6. Like that's top 5 average every single race. Truly, truly incredible fact. And I believe also this is a fun nugget. Both of those stats, including this one, are provided by Trey Ryan on Twitter. Check him out. Very helpful in terms of me expressing the statistics, I know a lot of them come from him. But Kevin Harvick has raced 40 races at Phoenix, never had a DNF. I'm knocking on wood that it doesn't happen, don't get me wrong. But Kevin Harvick's really amazing at this track, and I absolutely expect him to be contending for a top 10, top 5, and possibly a win. And if he's not a factor, this will be the worst NASCAR cold tank I think we've had on this show in quite a while. But yes, in terms of just how talented Kevin Harvick is at this track, it would be pretty nice to see, especially with how dominant the Fords have been at this track lately as well, that I really think Kevin Harvick can get it done at least in the top 10 today in qualifying and tomorrow in the race.
Yeah, Phoenix is a really great track for Kevin Harvick. And before they did the reconfiguration of this track, this was like a Kevin Harvick track. Like every time you come to Phoenix, you'd expect Kevin Harvick to be in the mix. And I expect much of the same this weekend. Yeah, looking at practices, say Harvick was 9th fastest, and looking at the best 10-lap averages, Harvick was in the top 5. So it would not surprise me to see Kevin Harvick, finish in the top 10, top 5, or potentially contend for the win. He's shown us in his final season of NASCAR Cup Series competition that he's still, one of the best out there. He's not a driver, that's fallen off, and, just his final season, and he's just trying to do the best that he can. Kevin Harvick is a serious contender, and I think if you're trying to figure out who you're going to pick for our pick-a-winner at the end of today's show, Kevin Harvick might be a really good choice because it looks like that he's hungry to go out there and get a win. I think he can win in his final full season.
Kevin Harvick definitely, I think, can never be counted out for potentially being a contender for top 5, potentially to win here at Phoenix. I see him. He's really driven. He wants to get this win, get another win at Phoenix, increase his stats, which will be remarkable considering how good he is at this track, and just carry that forward. And especially this year being NASCAR's 75th season, I think a lot of drivers, not just Kevin Harvick, want to say, I won during NASCAR's 75th season. And in honor of NASCAR's 75th season, since we bring up Kevin Harvick, back in 1998, NASCAR celebrated the 50 years, and Phoenix had been on the count since 1988, so just 10 years prior. Alan Kulwicki won that first race at Phoenix, and of course, debuted the Polish victory lap. He made it to NASCAR's list, released in 1998, of the 50 greatest drivers. Highlighted in yellow are the drivers that have won here, 10 in total, with Alan Kulwicki, Bill Elliott, Dale Earnhardt, Davey Allison, Mark Martin, Terry Labonte, Ricky Rudd, Dale Jarrett, Rusty Wallace, and Jeff Gordon. But Kevin Harvick is one of many drivers that have won at this track post 1998. So, Kobe, Matthew, if we were to see a hypothetical NASCAR greatest 75 drivers to add another 25 drivers to the list, based on past winners here at Phoenix and their performances, which drivers would you consider to be part of a NASCAR 75 best drivers?
Well, Joe, I think it's easy. You can't look no further than the 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Jimmie Johnson, and everything that he's accomplished in his career. And looking at his Phoenix stats, it's really impressive what he's done at this racetrack. He's won at Phoenix 4 times. He's finished in the top 5 45.7% of the time, and he has a top 10 finishing rate of 62.9. Super impressive there. He has an average start of 13.1 and an average finish of 10.2. And yeah, you're doing that well at Phoenix. You're definitely going to be all right. And we know Jimmie Johnson is one of the top drivers of all time, and he's had a really great career at Phoenix Raceway. So I think if I had to pick anyone from this list, it definitely has to be Jimmie Johnson.
And for me, I mean, I can go that way as well. It's a 7-time champion. I'd argue if the list of drivers, for those who can't see it, who have won here in the past 99, I would argue that the majority of these drivers are probably in the NASCAR top 75 all time. And I'd argue that 2 of them in more recent memory would be on my personal Mount Rushmore. I'm not going to share specifically who they are. I think we'll be hinted at who they are. Maybe someday you'll be able to see in a list of my top 5 all time. But I would argue if I'm not going to go the Jimmie Johnson route in the top 75, Kevin Harvick may be the best driver in the history at this specific track. But in terms of the 75, if you're not adding Jimmy Johnson, I think you have to add Kyle Busch to that list solely because most wins in NASCAR history combined in the NASCAR National 225, I believe. Kevin Harvick is third, though, all time. I believe is at 100 and I'm trying to think off the top of my head, 121 maybe. He's about 104, I think, back from Kyle Busch, which is truly remarkable. So both of those drivers are great. But other guys like Tony Stewart, champion, Matt Kenseth champion, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Busch Series champion, Kurt Busch, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., Logano, Elliott. All these guys have found a championship at least once during their careers that have won here. But if I'm going to pick someone besides Jimmy Johnson, like my counterpart here with Kobe did, I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I would be my first driver to add to that top 75 list all time.
I think I'll go with the driver that you have mentioned, Kevin Harvick. It's just so good here at this track. Yeah, it's been a while since he won at Phoenix, but he has such a long career, of course, starting way back in 2001 at Rockingham after we lost Dale Earnhardt. Here he is driving, and he's done Truck Series. He's done the Xfinity Series. Such a long career in NASCAR racing, not just in the Cup Series, but all around. I think Kevin Harvick should easily be one of the drivers too, as well as Jimmy Johnson and Kyle Busch, to be in NASCAR's potential greatest 75. And of course, a comment from Adam Lemrys agreeing with Kobe Lambeth on his selection of Kyle Busch. Now, Kobe, this race weekend, a little bit on the light side. We have one Cup Series race, but we have two supercar races, and almost sound like I'm talking about F1, a Red Bull 1-2 we got to talk about.
Yeah, and just like last year, Joe, we don't really have much to talk about in supercars until the narrative changes, and it doesn't look like the narrative is going to be changing anytime soon for the Repco Supercars Championship in the 2023 season. For that series, kicked off with the Newcastle 500, the first time supercars have raced here in 3 years. The beginning of a brand new era, the third generation car, Chevrolet Camaro replacing the Holden Commodore, and hopes that a new set of regulations would even the playing field. After one race, we quickly learned while it may be a new era, it's the same old story. We're living in a world with the field still chasing down Shane Van Gisbergen, who won race one, leading a Red Bull Ampol race and 1-2 finish with Brock Feeney coming home in second. Tickford's Cam Waters took the final spot on the podium. With the new Gen 3 regulations, many wondered if we'd see greater parity instead of SVG running away with the championship. So, Joe, after this first race of the season, should the field be concerned that nothing will change this year and Van Gisbergen will dominate again? I think you're muted, Joe.
It almost looks like it, doesn't it, Kobe, that Shane Van Gisbergen might run away with this. The one thing, though, he got that lead by using a short pit strategy on the first time, didn't get all the fuel, got ahead of everybody, and it just seemed like it was game over. Shane Van Gisbergen just seems to always find a way to get a win. That team is just still accelerating. But we saw the competition was a lot closer, though. This wasn't just an absolute blowout. They were pulling away from everybody. I think there's still hope for all the other teams that there could potentially be some opportunities, particularly if that team has an off day. See what happens. I know there is a protest going on right now, Kobe, so it's going to be really interesting to see if that leads to anything. But I think the teams, they all got to be talking about, okay, what do we got to do to beat them? And I think it's more in reach with this new car.
Yeah, for sure, Joe. And David said, welcome to the Gen 3 era supercar. Yeah, really excited to see all these new cars. And also good to see them back on the streets of Newcastle as well. And Joe, you mentioned that great strategy call that got Shane Van Gisbergen up into the lead, short pitted. And on the Supercars broadcast, they were talking about all the drivers, going with different leaders of fields, and Shane was the lightest. And they were actually skeptical of that call, thinking that Shane was gonna, that it was gonna hurt him later on in the race when he needed to, pack it full, while all the others could short pit after that. But Shane did a great job managing the tires, extended his gap throughout the course of the race, and did some really great things throughout this race, showing us that while we're in a new era racing, Shane Van Gisbergen is still Shane Van Gisbergen. And I think the competition should be very concerning, that it could be another SVG season where he's just going to go out there and win many of the races. But Joe, we shouldn't crown Shane Van Gisbergen yet. There's still some hope, at least for right now, that they can still take the fight to him. And overall, it looks like Red Bull Ampol Racing is definitely on this game. And before I get into the next thing, I believe we have some comments in the chat. Adam Limerick says those Gen 3 cars sound and look amazing. Say, by the way, the top 10 shootout for the race was the closest in history. Yeah, really cool to see how close they are in the lap times now. And then Matthew, who's backstage right now, said he would really love to see SVG on a Project 91 car at Chicago during the Supercars off weekend in early July. Yeah, Matthew, totally agree with you. Would really love to see SVG race in the NASCAR Cup Series later this year, and we'll see what happens there. And Joe, you mentioned that there's a protest going on, straight from the Supercars website. It says that Motorsport Australia confirmed protests were received from Tickford Racing against both Red Bull Ampol Racing Chevrolet Camaros, and they say a Walkenstein Andretti United protest was filed against Shane Van Gisbergen's car as well. And they said a hearing was held, and it's concluded, and then the stewards are deliberating. And they said if the protest is successful, the result may be altered. The decision will be handed down tomorrow morning. And now in Australia, it's tomorrow morning, so we're probably going to be hearing something within the next few hours ahead. And also, Motorsport Australia said in a statement that they can confirm that the protests were received from Tickford Racing against cars 88 and 97. That's Brock Feeney and Shane Van Gisbergen, and Walkinshaw and Andretti United against 97, which is SVG. And they said the deputy race director has also alleged a technical breach of C16.2 regarding the driver cooling system on the cars number 88 and 97. Yeah, so we should be hearing something about what's going to happen in regards to the protest, and we'll talk about it on tomorrow's Grid Live Wrap-Up show once we hear what happens there. And getting back to the action, Chevrolet got its first Supercars victory in 41 years with SVG, and for Van Gisbergen, this is career win number 76. Chevy also took the pole with Brody Kostecki leading the field of green and out front during the first stint. As the race went on, Kostecki faded to fifth, while his teammate at Airbus Motorsport, Will Brown, finished a spot behind in sixth. Joe, should Airbus be pleased with the pace they've shown through testing to the race? And do you see one of their drivers getting the win this year?
I do potentially see one of their drivers getting the win this year. I mean, they were looking really good in that final third practice overall. Brody, good, strong qualifying effort. Overall, I feel that team is looking really good. It's just the matter of having a quick lap, quick setup for qualifying, making it all work in a full race when you're racing against Triple Eight Racing, both cars using their strategy to try to get ahead of you. That's where I think they're going to have to really try to step up. But I do see they have the pace there, just a matter of getting that perfect race, because it just seems if you're going to go out there and try to beat Shane Van Gisbergen, you need to have almost a perfect race. This new car, hopefully we'll see some closer competition, so that way it just becomes less of a mountain for everyone to climb to pass him. But Brody, very impressive this weekend, and after seeing his stats, I do think he's going to get his first win.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're probably going to see Brody Kostecki win at some point this season. You mentioned needing to have the perfect race in order to beat Shane Van Gisbergen. To be honest, if Shane Van Gisbergen is still running at the end up front, I don't even think the perfect race is good enough to beat SVG. I think you're going to need him to have some bad luck. He's going to need to have a flat tire, mechanical failure, a crash that's going to put him out of contention, or have a really bad qualifying effort where it's too far to come all the way back, to get up there. And we saw that a few races last year where SVG had a bad qualifying session, and even he couldn't come all the way from the back to the lead to win the race. So I think you're going to need SVG to have an off day in order to get a win. But it's been really impressive to see how Airbus has started off this new era, two fast cars with Brody Kostecki leading the charge and Will Brown as well. And exited in 2021, that team had a lot of momentum, but going into 2022, we expected a lot more from them. But in a way, they kind of disappointed us because we really thought they'd have a better showing. But 2023 seems to be starting off on a positive, strong note. I know Matt White picked Brody to win the first race because he'd been impressed with what the pace they've shown through testing, and then coming to actual race weekend, that same pace we saw in testing was still there, and we even saw it in the race as well. But unfortunately, he just wasn't able to capitalize, and we'll see what Brody's going to be able to do in the second and final race of the weekend in Newcastle.
Going to be very exciting to see what happens in Newcastle. Demas, 4 years since the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been quite a while, but it was very exciting to see that Newcastle is back, and we welcome Matt back in because now it's time for everyone's favorite game. I know it's been frustrating Josh lately, but he got a point. Pick a winner.
Absolutely. And I'm very excited. I mean, I love this pick a winner game we're doing. Like you just said, Joe, it is time for everyone's favorite game. Unfortunately, we only have 2 NASCAR and the second Supercars race. If you look at the standings, I moved up as well. We are still not near Edward, but we are getting closer. Alex, myself, and Kobe, we are all sitting at 4 apiece. So very excited for that. So I'm going to start with you, Joe, for this one. You're going to start with NASCAR. Who is your pick a winner for Phoenix tomorrow?
For Phoenix tomorrow, I'm looking at a Ford. I feel Stuart Haas, Chase Briscoe, he's run well here. One driver I feel everyone's going to be talking about, of course, Kevin Harvick. But I'm going to go with a little bit of surprise. He surprised everyone a couple years ago over at New Hampshire. I'm going with Eric Almirola to get the win at New Hampshire. I know it will be a big surprise for a lot of folks if he gets it done, but that's my pick for Phoenix.
And I'm gonna go with the driver known as the closer. I think Kevin Harvick is gonna get the job done and try to kick off his championship run in his final full-time season.
And for me, I think just to give some background on Joe's pick, Eric Almirola has 24 straight races here at Phoenix without a DNF. I think that's an amazing pick. He was my number 2 for today. I had the diecast ready, but I thought to myself, I'm going to stick here with Kobe. 22 years ago today, the closer went into victory reign for the first time in his NASCAR career. And then, boom, number 4, I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick as well for my NASCAR pick. It's hard. Like I said, peanut butter and cheeseburgers, Kevin Harvick in Phoenix. Just that simple for NASCAR for me. And like I said earlier, we welcome all comments below. Who's your pick a winner for both races? But going into the Supercars race number 2, if you missed the first one with SVG's dominance, you still have a chance to pick again. So starting with you, Joe, who is going to win the second Supercars race of the weekend?
I feel like it's not going to be a surprise compared to my Eric Almirola pick. I'm going with Shane Van Gisbergen. We just don't know when he's not going to win a race. So that's my pick, Shane Van Gisbergen for race 2.
Yeah, Shane Van Gisbergen is probably going to be the pick every single race this year for everybody unless he has a really bad qualifying effort. So my pick is also going to be SVG as well to sweep the weekend. I don't feel confident in anybody else to get the job done right now. And Adam Lemmeries is also picking Shane Van Gisbergen for race 2 on the Newcastle 500 weekend. And also, he has Kyle Larson winning the Cup race at Phoenix.
And for me personally, like I bring the diecast into this. I don't know if Supercars even has diecast, but I know our very own Ben Schneider has a ton of Red Bull stuff. So I'm going to pull up my Formula One car, Red Bull. That's all I got. Shane Van Gisbergen for me as well. So hopefully we can all keep getting close to Edward, but I have a feeling that's who he picked for race 2 as well. So
yeah, so on Twitter, Edward went with SVG. So this is an opportunity where somebody's brave enough, like Matt was. He went with Brody Kosecki, just one position short. He could have been the one person had it been reversed. So we encourage everyone to participate and pick a winner. See if you can get on the leaderboard or closer to Ed on the leaderboard. And we are out of time. But once again, a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. David, our newest Patreon, you can invest in the Grid Network each and every month. Once we hit $500, we'll be sending folks to the track more regularly and frequently around the United States. And you can also contribute through Buy Me a Coffee. Some of these fine folks bought coffee for everyone on the Daytona 500 pre-race show. We definitely encourage you to show your support and appreciation for the work we do to bring you all the on-air content. And follow us on social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, of course. Hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube, and the like button helps us with the algorithm. So all your friends that watch motorsports, they'll all see about it. And of course, Grid Rank It on Twitter, and check out our LinkedIn as well too. If you're looking for an opportunity in motorsports journalism, we'll love to be a good starting point. And we thank everyone for tuning in to today's program. And a big thank you to everyone here at the Grid Network for the last few weeks as I've been away. Definitely been a lot of fun. We're getting closer to our goal, 1,000 subscribers before the Indianapolis 500. We're less than 20 subscribers away from 600, so hit that subscribe button. For Matthew Bro and Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Samriego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.